Hello, welcome. This is Scott Barron with School Growth, and we are very glad that you are here to join us for a conversation around how do we make this next school year really different? How do we make it where starting the new school year, how do we start it like a champion? How do we make sure that this next year is just the best year ever for your school? And that's what our conversation is about this month and next month as we look at different strategies. We've looked at how to start the school year off with the first day of school and with a 90-day plan as well. And we hope that you've had a chance to review those webinars and seen some of the notes that we've posted in the blog as well. Because we want to make sure that, of course, that we start off this next school year with a great deal of enthusiasm, with momentum, because our goal, of course, is school growth, right? That's what we're passionate about here at our organization, is really helping schools. Sometimes you hit that point where you have to decide, are we going to go left or we're going to go right? Which direction is going to be able to help us really accomplish the school of your dreams? And that's our mission, is inspiring the dreams of your students. So that means helping you design the school of your dreams to inspire theirs. That's why we do what we do. And the question that we challenge school leaders with frequently is, why are you still leading with someone else's vision and plans? You're there for a reason. And too often we've seen school leaders they're still trapped because they don't have a really clear vision of what they're doing and know what they want. And so they end up running somebody else's vision or plans from sometimes years ago because of not having a clear path for innovation and improvement. And so, what we are committed to doing is helping school leaders understand how to take advantage of a lot of the changes in technology and learning standards and instructional approaches, and how to develop talent, how to recruit talent, how to develop your board. So, we've designed a methodology around school design, which incorporates governance, operations, administration, and learning, and then are guiding schools through a process of innovating faster, of improving their school faster, and using a disciplined approach that allows them to consistently innovate and to think like entrepreneurs. That's what we do at School Growth. And we're glad that you've joined us here for this conversation around how do we communicate well and begin thinking about how to structure some of those strategies now for next year. And so the way that we deliver our programs is through our innovation labs, first of all. And so those are 2-day sessions where we guide schools through the establishment of a very clear vision for where they want to go, the why behind what they're doing, understanding value propositions and key activities and resources, and target market. So this is all the vocabulary of entrepreneurs and venture capitalists, because that's how you innovate, and that's how you begin thinking differently about how we evolve the design of schools, and take advantage of some of the new opportunities that are available in your market to improve and to grow. So we follow that up with coaching to help our schools begin to implement some of those strategies. And then sometimes there's a little more involved in solving some of the challenges that the school is facing. So we provide some consulting as well to overcome some of those barriers and to begin a process of reinvention. And then, of course, for some schools, they're also looking at how do we take advantage of some of the social media, the multimedia strategies out there, because we recognize that our school is not just the same idea of school from the past, but instead we really are a community platform. We are going to be a place where families can go for a variety of resources, and we're going to leverage our platform to not only drive marketing and enrollment for our school and fundraising, but also to be a community asset in the target market that we serve. So also in that the idea of doing a platform development. So that's what we do at School Growth. So if you have any questions about that, you can send an email to innovate@schoolgrowth.com, and we can share with you more information about how those programs work and how we can help you in your strategies and going forward. So as we begin looking at today's session, Our goal for this session is to present to you some ideas, and that's the purpose of these webinars. It's sometimes we get some feedback. We get a lot of great feedback from everyone. Sometimes people are, they get it and they're excited about it, and others they want more detail. Well, the webinars are really designed to inspire thinking, to cause you to ask questions. They are not to give you a full detail of how to do a lot of these things. There's a lot of different options that would have to be considered for your situation. So we do offer a 30-minute free coaching session for those that are interested. If you really want to dive in more specifically about how to implement some of these strategies, whether it's teacher evaluation rubrics or how to script that first day of school, etc. So this is free information. It's brought to you by our sponsors, and it's a way to really spark some thoughts in your program as you're beginning to evolve your school design, especially now because you're wrapping up the school year most likely, and you're already doing your all your plans for the fall. And so that's the reason for these resources, and we hope that you're able to take advantage of these and use these effectively with your administration, your board, as you begin crafting your design for this next school year. So our goal for today is to talk about communication. Communication is the bedrock of leadership. We have yet to meet a great leader who also wasn't also a great communicator. And so, what we want to know is what are the specific skills that you could develop that would make a huge impact on this next school year, that would make it just a great year. And so, what we're looking at is, what are some of the habits? How can you not only share your story more effectively, but how can you also listen to your stakeholders, your families, and your faculty more effectively? So that's our goal for today, and I hope that you're able to gain some insights from this conversation. You can use your questions section there on your control panel if you'd like to have specific questions about some of the topics as we go through this conversation today. All right. Quick quote for you here. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. One of the things that we've learned as we've worked with schools and worked with leaders and other industries as well is that there's two basic problems and causes for the failure of relationships. And those two basic problems are: one is poor communications, poor communication skills, and two are conflicting expectations, where they're not clearly communicated, of course, but they're not established, and so people kind of end up having to make up the rules or the expectations as they go, and then there's inevitably a conflict that happens, and this happens a lot with school boards, honestly, where there's not there's not a single voice of expectations and feedback, but instead there's multiple voices, and it's very difficult and stressful for the chief administrator to be successful. So what we're finding is that this point by George Bernard Shaw really is true. Is that there's sometimes we assume that we've communicated well, and what we don't realize is there's actually some guidelines, and there's some what we call the laws of the grapevine, and this is a material that we were able to develop over the last few years, and have shared this at a couple of school conferences, and a book's coming out later this year called The Laws of the Grapevine. And it's the basic principles that so often get overlooked as we are crafting our messages and our communication strategies. So we're going to share some of that with you today. Would love your feedback on that as we are working on the transcript for the book as well. So your feedback is very, very welcomed. So when you think about the school organization, right? This is your faculty, your staff, your administration, your support folks, your janitors, everybody in the school, every school employee, right? That's encompassed there in this red circle called the school organization. What do they want? How can you build a culture of trust in your school that allows them to thrive? As the as a leader in your school or the leader in your school, that's your job. That's your primary role, is providing a culture of trust within this organization, because we know for sure that that's the environment in which people, especially teachers, will thrive. And we know that the number one contributor to student success is what? Faculty engagement, right? We know for sure that that's the number one predictor of student success. So it makes sense to pay attention to that as we move forward. As school leaders, how do we do that? What is the kind of environment that we can create where faculty do have a way to engage well, and they are able to do their job in a way that is inspiring for their peers as well as their students? Well, it turns out that in the studies that have been conducted around schools and quite frankly other organizations, there are very specific things that people want. As they begin to rate organizations that are the best places to work, there's three things that are consistently at the top, and they are trust, joy, and belonging. So, trust for any type of organization, but especially a school, trust is gained through safety. People want to feel safe. They want to know that when they go to work, that that it's a predictable environment, that they know how the communications are going to be shared, that they're not going to be surprised, that they're not having to play those political games. You never know, how people are going to use information, sometimes even as a weapon. You never know who has spread what rumors. The gossip is divisive, right? You've seen some schools like this. Unfortunately, I have too. They're not very healthy in terms of their organization nor their faculty culture. What people want is they want trust, and your job as a leader is to give them a safe environment in which to operate. There's multiple, sort of threats that are coming at a teacher every day, or a staff member every day, right? From students or parents or people in the community, or vendors, or I mean, there's all kinds of things that are pushing at them. They need to know that from you as the leader, that you've got their back, that as they make decisions, that there's a belonging, there's a connectedness in the organization, that there's clear lines of authority, of expectations, and of communication. When you can provide that level of leadership in your school, your people have the best opportunity to be their best. They have the best opportunity to pursue their dreams as well as to inspire the dreams of their students. So, as we're looking to craft this idea around and the strategy around communication, it's not just so that you know how to do public speaking better, or you know how to somehow provide a better letter or communication to the board. This really is about, how do you begin building a whole culture in your school around trust, around joy, and around this idea of belongingness, of connectedness. Because when you're able to do that, you will find that the whole organization is going to have the ability to grow, to reach new students, and your ability to produce what we call raving fans. Right? That's a term that we use to describe families that are really enthusiastically excited about our schools. What's your number one source of leads for new families? Right? Inquiries come from word of mouth marketing, always number one. You have to have families who are stoked about your school and want to share the story of your program. And that starts with having faculty who are excited about your school, who want to share that story and want to tell others at the neighborhood, or at the pool, or at the country club, or at church, or wherever you are. They naturally, you don't have to incentivize these people. They are excited. They are motivated intrinsically, right? That's what we're producing. When we can build a culture in the school of trust. So what does the opposite look like? Like we talked about earlier, the opposite of this is where when people come to your school, they don't know who's in charge. There's no clearly articulated expectations, right? There's gossip and dissension happening in the classroom. There's a Sometimes the head of school might say, or the principal might say, hey, what the superintendent doesn't know, or what the board doesn't know, it won't hurt them. Right? That's not good leadership. You want to establish a culture of trust, of security, of wise communication, recognizing that there are very specific guidelines and principles at work in your grapevine, as we call it, which is the human network all throughout your school. So, how can you develop an intentional strategy so that next year is different? It's different for you personally, but it's especially different for your teachers and the employees throughout the school because you have a team. You have a team that runs so well that the joy they have at work, the connectedness they have together is a game changer. That's the way you transform a school, and it's the foundation on which we seek to innovate around the school design. So, another thought to share with you. This comes from, of all places, Charles Dickens. Electric communication will never be a substitute for the face of someone who, with their soul, encourages another person to be brave and true. I love that line. Social media is a powerful communications tool. That and email are two of the things that will absolutely ruin the trust in your organization and in your grapevine. Did you know that? It will. And I can share with you some examples of that later, but the speed of communications fast is not the goal most of the time. The goal is what? It's trust, right? We're communicating to be not just to be heard, we're communicating to build trust because we know that's the foundation that our organization needs in order to dream big as well as to inspire dreams, right? So that's what we're looking for as we consider some of these keys to building trust. Key number 1 is to listen. What can you do this next year to do a better job of listening to the families and faculty in your school? What can you do to connect with them, whether that's whether using surveys or using planned meetings? Of course, once you listen, having a high degree of follow through on what commitments you make to respond to any concerns that are raised is important as well. But first of all, is developing the habits of listening so that people know that they have a voice, that an appropriate voice. Just because someone has an opinion doesn't mean it's necessarily valuable, but we do want to give people a chance to give you feedback to so that you can make adjustments. We go into every school year acknowledging that, hey, we have not arrived yet. We have room for improvement. And our commitment to that is we're going to listen to you as our students, as our parents, as our teachers, as our staff, and we're going to improve. We're going to innovate on our school design because we're so committed to helping our students become leaders and thinkers and dream pursuers, right? So we're going to listen. We're going to make adjustments in our school throughout the year, and we're going to be intentional about that. The second thing is to sequence your communications. And this is something that is becomes really the key as you're starting to share messages. So this is when you want to share updates or share stories, especially stories. That the sequence in which you share communication is critical. And there's not much training that's provided around this concept, but the sequence in which you share information is the basis on which people determine the value of their relationship with you. So the sequence should be that you want to implement in your school and your organization is up, out, down, and around. Up, out, down, and around. Think about your organizational chart, right? If you are the school administrator, if you're the chief administrator, where's the first place that you communicate? The first place that you communicate is up to the board, right? You communicate the news or the feedback or whatever it is, you communicate up to the board first. Never should an information be sent out to your faculty, your families, or anyone else until the people in authority know of the information, are able to give feedback on that, and then are able to share that within their networks. Always up first. No secrets, no surprises is your goal. Okay. Up, out, down, and around. So your up, of course, is to the supervisor relationship. So that means that That means if that, of course, before a teacher sends out an update to all of her students, that she first shares that up to the principal, or the head of school, or the superintendent, whoever that person is, that they share it up first. That has a chance to be shared, and then at the appropriate time, that is then shared out with their peers, which is the out, right? Up out. So then the person shares that with their peers. Then they share it down, which would be to the students in the school, in their classroom, and then finally out to the community if that's appropriate. Up, out, down, and around. Depending on how important this message is, there are time gaps between each level of sharing this information. If it's a very important piece of information, then you allow more time. If it's something that's not really that critical, then you can share that kind of faster. What happens is, an example of when you violate this sequence, if you really want to make your faculty upset with you as a school administrator, go ahead and send out a message to all of your families and don't tell them first, right? You know it's true. You know what happens. The faculty get really upset because like, wait a minute, I've never heard about that. Maybe it's a teacher who doesn't have kids in the school and they never get these updates from you and they don't know what's going on. That undermines trust. The sequence matters. The same thing is true for the board. The board should not be sending things out to parents until it's gone through the sequence of the administration, the faculty leadership, all faculty, parent leadership, all parents, and then out to everyone else in the community. If you follow this sequence, what happens? It gives people a chance to hear the information, and then they get to go and say, hey, guess what? Right? They get to share that information themselves in their own network. When you share it with your parent leadership, the head of your PTA or PTO or PALS or whatever you call it in your school, your booster club and your fine arts group and all the other parent leaders, when you invest in them, when you give them information first, what do they get a chance to do? They get to back you up. They get to go and have other parents come to them and say, what does this mean? What do they mean when they said that? They can say, "Yeah, they shared that with us ahead of time, and here's what it means, and we support this decision." You give them a chance to be leaders. When you blast everything out at the same time, you undermine the chain of command, the chain of relationships. Want an example? Look at what LeBron James did a few years ago when he announced that he was going to leave the Cleveland Cavaliers and go to Miami. What did he do? He got on ESPN and he had this big TV show called what? The Answer, right? And it was going to be, this was going to be, or The Decision. And this was going to be his big decision, his big announcement. And he gets on there and says, in front of live national television, I'm taking my talents to South Beach. If you're not an athlete, if you're not into sports, what that meant was he was leaving the team where he'd grown up, his hometown, and there in Cleveland, and was moving to Florida to play for the team there. And it was a big deal. What should he have done? He should have gone to the owner of the Cavaliers and said, Mr. Gilbert, I'm going to be going to the team in Ohio. Thank you so much for the opportunities I've had here, but I'm going to be making a different decision. Then to his coach, then to his teammates, then to his other advisors, then to the other people who are close to him, and then out to everyone. Instead, he lost a lot of credibility. He lost a lot of money and endorsements in the process because he violated a lot of relationships. This happens all the time in schools. We see problems that administrators are having to address simply because they did not respect this law of the grapevine, the first law of the grapevine, which is people derive their value based on the sequence in which you share information. The sequence matters. It's not just what you say and how you say it, it's the order in which you say it. This also applies in your home life. It applies in any type of organized church life, whatever you're a part of. Establishing and understanding the sequence of communication will be a game changer for you. I promise. It will be the first step in you building much deeper trust relationships in your program. Frequence is the other aspect of this. So sequence and frequence. Frequence, by the way, is a word. If you type this into your word processor, it'll have a little red line under it, but it actually is a word. And so frequence is that there's a cycle to communication, right? And we're not just looking for you to share information when we have a crisis. We're looking for you having a steady plan to how you share information. You should have an update going out to parents, once a month, once a week, whatever your frequency is, and so that there's a regular rhythm. What we're looking for is a rhythm to the communication, right? If it's sporadic, people never know where it's going to come in, and there's no again there's no rhythm to the pace in which you're setting in your communications. So we're looking for both sequence as well as frequency in how we're sharing it. And then what that produces, of course, is flow. So that when you have information to share, and sort of a way to describe this is that a steady flow helps your grapevine grow, but a sudden flash gives the grapevine a rash. Okay, so here's what we mean by that: is that as you continue to build your frequency and your sequence and your frequency, what happens is you get into a rhythm and there's a flow. And what that means is when it's time to announce somebody had to change jobs. Someone had to be some change happened in personnel, right? So you have to make that announcement. When you have a steady rhythm and you have your sequence right, people trust you, and they know that when you say things that you share it, that there's a logic behind it, that there's a reason. And there's a reasonableness to what you're sharing. And so they trust you more. There's less emphasis on trying to figure out sort of the conspiracy theories that sometimes dominate too many schools. But there is a deeper level of trust because that's what the flow creates, right? It's just like with when you have a lot of rain coming at the same time and it causes a flash flood, right? That causes erosion. It causes a breakdown. And that's the same thing is true when you start blasting things out on Facebook or Twitter or any other tools that you have. You're actually causing a rush, a flood that undermines your relationships and your grapevine throughout the school. The social media is the last place you share the information. You start with your sequence and then you build out from there. And what medium you use depends on what type of information it is. Sometimes it's a personal conversation, sometimes it's a phone call, sometimes it's an email to just a select group of people, and then sometimes then it can be a blast out to everyone, or via a tweet or to or email or something else. But that flow matters. And as you keep a steady flow going, you'll find that the communication trust that you have and the relationships that you're able to build will be much deeper. Repetition is necessary in some of your messaging, especially if it's good news. One of the laws of the grapevine is that good news travels about 10% as fast as bad news. So bad news travels 1,000 times faster because a lot of times it doesn't have to be validated. Good news has to be validated usually. Things that are more positive, there's more of a, oh, come on, really? Are you sure? But when bad news is shared, boy, it just seems to go so much faster, right? So when you're sharing good news, repetition especially is important. You have to remind people of what you're doing. Sometimes you have that curse of knowledge in your school where you see all these great things going on in your classrooms. You have all this great evidence that's happening there that the students are writing or designing, and you see all this stuff, but the people outside of your school sometimes don't get a chance to see that. Your board members or your parent, you have to remind them, you have to show them sometimes repetitively so that they get it and want to share that same story. And the more that you can make those elements story, you can create a narrative around that. It's easier to share. Okay, people are far more excited about sharing stories than they are just key points or data, right? So knowing how to craft the stories around what's happening in your school, far more powerful for the grapevine. And of course, the other thing is depth, is that as you're creating conversations, and this is what we're looking for, as you're creating the platform around your school, what you're looking to create is a conversation with your target market, even with the families who don't attend your school, the families who match up with your the profile of the families that you're trying to reach. You want to use your multimedia strategy to create a trusted conversation. When they can see you as a resource around parenting issues, school issues, academic challenges, adolescent problems, etc., when they can see you as a genuine resource for them, they're going to share the story of what's happening in your school, whether they go to your school or not. That's what you want to use your social media and traditional media, the whole multimedia package, creating that platform for your school to create a depth of conversation. And a conversation here, what we're talking about, it has real meaning to it. It's not just sort of cursory, surface level conversation, but it's real deep, meaningful. And the more that, again, that's personal stories, the more powerful those conversations will be, and the higher degree of trust that you're going to have. And then finally is preparation. And this is another one of the laws of the grapevine, is that preparation will head off a lot of the diseases that will attack your grapevine. What is that? The gossip, the dissension, some of the other negative things that are going to crop up. So some of those conspiracy theory people who are out there, inevitably, we in every organization throughout society, there are what we call cave people, that citizens against virtually everything, right? You know those people. Unfortunately, there's a few of those on this call. They're inevitably, hopefully not many, but there's those cave people, right? Citizens against virtually everything. You just can't make them happy, but you can be prepared. You can be prepared by having your communications planned, knowing how you're going to respond to situations that are going to come up. I don't know of anybody on this call who hasn't in the last few years had a situation around a change in personnel, maybe the death of a parent or a faculty member. They've had to deal with disruptions around student decisions. We've actually had some schools, this last week, they had to decide, are they going to let the student graduate because of a poor decision that they made. And it's very stressful. It's hard, but you can be prepared for those situations. They shouldn't surprise you. It shouldn't be a time for you to begin figuring out, well, well, now what are we going to do, right? I don't know. What are we going to do, right? These are things that you can plan, you can be prepared for, because they're going to happen. If you're a private school, you're going to be announcing a tuition increase most likely, or you're going to be making other changes around personnel. Be prepared for that. Know how you're going to handle it. Have that sequence planned. Have those messages prepared. Know who's going to speak to who. If it's something that's going to get some attention from the local press or the national press, sometimes that happens too. Be prepared for that, right? Those preparations that you can make now over this next 90 days will help you make sure that you are continuing to build trust throughout your organization, and especially in your target market. So these are the keys: listening, sequence, frequency, flow, repetition, depth, and preparation. If you can begin applying these laws of the grapevine, you're going to find your ability to greatly increase the quality of your communications and the trust and the joy and the belongingness that you have in your school. It will go up exponentially. We've had school leaders, we've had for-profit companies come back to us and say that the laws of the grapevine, the practice, the habits that you're talking about have changed our leadership. They've transformed our organization. We didn't know. We just didn't know that those things were important, but they are. So if you can start applying these principles in your school, promise you, you will have a chance to establish a whole new culture throughout your program. So thanks for joining us here today. We want to thank our webinar sponsors, Smart Tuition Management, and what they do to inspire innovation in schools, RenWeb and their student information system, and of course Cornice and Rose with what they're doing with property legacy planning for those long-term designs of campus plans and buildings and planned giving that really is transforming schools. So we're very grateful to our sponsors for the webinar, and also just want to remind you that we do have coming up next week, we're going to be talking about marketing tips to grow enrollment. Again, no matter what type of school you are, public, private, or charter, we're all looking to grow our enrollment and looking for ways to attract the students that will be a good match for our school. So we're going to talk about some more contemporary strategies for doing that next Tuesday at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. We want to remind you, of course, that we do have our innovation lab coming up in June, and we do offer customized innovation labs as well, along with our coaching, consulting, and platform development. Thank you so much for your time. We hope that you are continuing to grow in your school and providing inspired school design as you're looking to grow for this next year. Take care.